Welcome back to Everything Whatsoever. Solomon and Clementine, and this is part 2 of our walk through Stephen Yablo's Go Figure, A Path Through Fictionalism.
If you missed part 1, go back. This genuinely will not land without it. And part 1 is where the horses live.
Right then, part 2 proper. Clementine, it has been a few days. Rebuild the road for us.
Right. The predicament. We say things committed to entities we don't believe in. Hold your horses. The number of moons is 2. Quine's menu says paraphrase, abstain, or capitulate, and calls anything else double talk, while Quine himself quietly keeps a 4th option running for meanings and attributes. The 4th option, made official, advance the sentences in a fictional spirit. Then the ladder. Instrumentalism, just make as if because useful collapsed because it couldn't say what we really mean, when we obviously really mean something. Metafictionalism, what you really assert is that the story endorses S, collapsed on modality, concern, and phenomenology. 2 plus 3 is 5 isn't contingent, starvation isn't regrettable according to math, and none of it feels like talk about a story.
And station 3?
Object fictionalism, the beautiful one. The fiction is medium, not message, like the rules of English. Real content of S is log base F of S, the worldly condition that makes S true in the fiction. So the number of moons is 2 really says there are 2 moons. 2 plus 3 is 5 really says a logical truth. Everything is paid, on my scorecard, the decoder ring, who fixes the real content and what stops it being self-serving. And in my hand, the 2 biconditionals, quasi-assertable if and only if true in the story, quasi-assertable if and only if the real content obtains, and a section title glowing in the dark, the bomb.
Then let us be about it. First, provenance, because Yablo is scrupulous about it, and the machinery here is load-bearing but built elsewhere, so we will take 1 deliberate minute to build it ourselves. The objection detonated first under a different building, Gideon Rosen's Modal Fictionalism, from his 1990 paper, In Mind. Rosen had proposed treating possible worlds talk as prefixed by according to the fiction of plurality of worlds, keeping David Lewis's paradise without Lewis's ontology. And critics, Rosen himself and Stuart Brock, independently, in 1993, which is why the literature files it as the Brock-Rosen objection, noticed that the fiction operator misbehaves on certain sentences about the fiction's own subject matter. Then in 1996, Daniel Nolan and John O'Leary Hawthorne published a paper in Analysis called Reflexive Fictionalisms, showing the misbehavior was no local quirk of worlds. It generalizes to any fictionalism of this shape, numbers, properties, all of it. That generalized misbehavior is what Yablo calls the bomb.
Okay, arm it. Slowly.
Under the hood then, and I will letter the steps the way the paper does. Premise A. A number sentence is quasi-assertable if and only if it is true according to the number story. Premise B. It is quasi-assertable if and only if its real content obtains. Both of these are the fictionalist's own doctrine. You said it yourself, 2 biconditionals bolted to 1 hull. Now, premise C, and tell me if you dispute it. According to the number story, the number of even primes is 1.
No dispute. In the story, there are all the numbers. 2 is the only even prime, so the story says 1 even prime.
From A and C, the sentence, the number of even primes is 1, is quasi-assertable. Call that D. Now, apply B to D. The sentence is quasi-assertable, so its real content obtains. And what is the real content by the object fictionalist's own recipe of the number of even primes is 1?
Log base F of it. The worldly condition that makes it true in the story, which is that there really is exactly 1 even prime, which requires, oh no, that there really is an even prime. Step E, there exists a number.
There exists a number, derived from the fictionalist's own 2 principles plus 1 undeniable fact about the story. The whole motivation was a construal of number talk that did not commit you to numbers, and the construal itself has just committed you to numbers. Rosen has a phrase for the position you wake up in, and it is too good to paraphrase. The fictionalist winds up a platonist, malgré, in spite of himself.
Hang on though, hang on. My nominalist reflex says, just refuse the relevance of premise C, or, no, let me try the other direction. Forget deriving what I hate, start from what I want. I want to say there really are no numbers. Run the machine backwards and see what it costs me.
Do it aloud. This is Yablo's own second pass, so you are in good company.
I assert there are no numbers. Call it E prime. By biconditional, B, quasi-assertable if and only if the real content obtains. The sentence, the number of numbers is 0, is quasi-assertable because its real content is exactly my E prime. No numbers. That's D prime. Now biconditional A caches quasi-assertability as truth in the story. So, according to the number story, the number of numbers is 0, C prime. And that's false. Flagrantly false. According to the story, the number of numbers is enormous. The story is the one place absolutely stuffed with numbers.
So the machine, run forward, makes you a platonist, and run backward makes you a liar about the fiction. And Yablo twists once more. Look at the sentence itself. The number of numbers is 0. Never mind the story. Could that sentence be true anywhere, ever?
Well, if the number of numbers is 0, then there's a number doing the numbering, 0 itself. So there's at least one number, so the number of numbers isn't 0. It refutes itself in the mouth. It's not false, it's self-immolating. And I suppose the property version is the same shape. The property fictionalist wants there are no properties, gets, according to the property story, being a property has no instances, and being a property is an instance of itself. The results aren't wrong, they're incoherent.
Either the fictionalist is a platonist, or the story becomes incoherent. That is the bomb, fully armed and detonated, and I want to sit in the crater for a moment before anyone reaches for a shovel. Because notice where the hull tore, precisely where you said it might. The two biconditionals pull apart on exactly one kind of sentence, sentences about the X things themselves. Everywhere else, story truth and worldly real content march in step, point the apparatus at its own subject matter, and they march off a cliff in opposite directions. It is, and I mean this with complete sincerity, a beautiful failure. The objection is not a quibble at the edge of the view. It is the view's own two commandments meeting in a contradiction. One so rarely sees a doctrine die of its virtues.
There it is! There it is! I needle you for 2 hours about being insufficiently excited and you finally light up like a pinball machine at the funeral. The corpse is right there, Professor.
The corpse is the lesson. This is what I meant last time when I said the section titles were telling you something. A lesser paper would call section 6 the objection and hurry past it, embarrassed. Yablo calls it the bomb because he intends to detonate it properly, stand in the smoke, and learn the blast pattern. Which brings us to section 7, and the reason we know Yablo isn't merely burying his own view. Section 7 is called How I Learned to Love the Bomb.
Right, and having now seen the crater, how could you love this? The self-refutation bit especially. The number of numbers is 0 has the same shape as this sentence is false. You don't repair that, you evacuate.
Does it seem obviously false to you, that sentence?
Obviously, yes. Self-defeatingly, yes.
Then let me tell you about Ned. Ned is a naive speaker, and his friend Jerry is a joker. Jerry has taught Ned that when people describe someone as, let us say, full of it, and Yablo notes the phrase is elliptical for something he would rather not come out with, they are making a surprising but well-supported claim about the contents of that person's body. Yablo's example of a person so described is a politician of the day, Pat Buchanan, and his other example is Holocaust deniers, and the reader may supply their own. Ned believes Jerry. Ned now believes certain anatomical propositions. How do you set Ned straight?
You say, nobody is literally full of it, Ned. It's a figure of speech.
Ned replies, that begs the question. It seems a figure of speech to you only because you find the literal reading uncharitable, because you have not grasped the facts about Buchanan as expounded by Jerry. And at this point, Yablo says, we are likely to throw up our hands and say, and here is the sentence, listen to its shape. Anyone who says people are full of it is full of it.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, out of context, that sentence is, the number of numbers is 0. It condemns a class of speakers that includes the speaker. You just said people are full of it, so you're full of it, so...
Unless, Clementine, unless...
Unless the two occurrences aren't doing the same job. Oh, that's lovely. First occurrence literal, people who claim literal fullness. Second occurrence figurative, those people are talking rot. Read it that way and the sentence is not self-defeating, it is true, and it is exactly what Ned needs to hear. The same string of words, one half sincere, one half in the figure.
Now run Ned on numbers. Jerry has taught him that the point of saying the number of Martian moons is 2 is to assert an identity between two abstract objects. We, nominalistically inclined, tell Ned that Jerry's reading is problematic because there are no numbers. Ned protests, but Jerry says the number of numbers is Aleph naught. And our counter-reply, in Yablo's words nearly, far from being aleph naught, the number of numbers,
is 0. And now it's true. Same sentence that self-immolated 20 minutes ago, and in this mouth, in this context, it's not only coherent, it's the precise and correct thing for a nominalist to say. Numbers as counted things, 0 of them out there. 0 as counting device, borrowed from the figure, no belief required. The sentence does 2 jobs at once with 1 string of words which, you said in part 1, was going to be the point of the whole.
Go figure, quite literally.
Go figure! Okay, so the bomb didn't refute fictionalism, it refuted a fictionalism that assumed every number word in a sentence is doing the same kind of work. What we need is an account where words can, where the same object can be, what? Sometimes the lens and sometimes the thing looked at?
You have just laid the foundation stone of section 8, which is called reflexive fictionalism. And the paper's own vocabulary for your lens and looked at is this. An X can function as a representational aid or as a thing represented. Yablo's illustration is butterflies. When I say I had butterflies in my stomach, butterflies are a representational aid. Nobody checks my abdomen. The butterflies are borrowed to convey my nerves. When I say the butterflies were splattered all over the windscreen,
real insects, really dead. Things represented. And numbers can be either.
The number of Martian moons is 2, borrows the number as an aid to say something about moons. There are no numbers in the nominalist's mouth, treats numbers as the things the sentence is about. And here is Yablo's diagnosis of the bomb, cleanly. Object fictionalism never contemplates, even for a moment, that X things might function as things represented. It files numbers under aid, once, forever. So when a sentence comes along in which numbers are the topic, the view mechanically applies rules built for the other case and produces rubble. It is not blind to the aid versus represented distinction. It uses it, numbers on one side, concreta on the other. What it misses is that X things travel, they change sides between games, within a game, within a single sentence.
The full of it sentence being the proof, 1 phrase, 2 sides, 4 words apart. Right, so reflexive fictionalism rebuilds with travel permitted. 2 roles, on or off, that's a 2 by 2, 4 kinds of sentence. Aid only, represented only, both, neither, and neither is just, the cat is on the mat, no numbers anywhere, so really 3 kinds that matter. And then, presumably the crucial claim is that each of the 3 blocks your lettered argument differently. The both case is the interesting one, obviously that's the number of numbers.
Clementine, you have sprinted to case 3, because case 3 is the one with fireworks in it, and you have skipped clean over the ground floor, which is where the actual defusing happens. Speed is a virtue until it decides for you which steps were boring. Back up. Case 1. What blocks the argument in ordinary applied talk?
Fair. I did skip it because it looked like the boring one, and that is exactly when I skipped the wrong thing. Case 1. Applied X talk. The number of Martian moons is 2. Numbers as aids only, the real content, the K, the exponent, is a condition on moons, concreta. So when the lettered argument tries to move from B to C, tries to read a fact about numbers out of the real content, it can't, because in applied talk the real content never mentions numbers. K is a predicate of regular things. The argument stalls at B, it never leaves the ground.
On to case 2.
Explicit X talk. There are numbers, said by the Platonist. There are no numbers, said by me. There is an even prime as it occurs inside the bomb derivation. Numbers as things represented, full stop, no aid, no figure, no game. But premises A and B are principles of quasi-assertion. No make-believe in play, no quasi-assertion. No quasi-assertion, A and B simply don't apply. Off limits. The argument can't even state its premises here. When I say there are no numbers, I'm speaking plainly, and plain speech doesn't owe the fiction anything.
And now the fireworks. Case 3, and take it slowly, because the blocking move here is different in kind from the other 2.
Self-applied X talk. The number of even primes is 0, in my nominalist mouth. The 0 is an aid, I'm borrowing it to count. The even primes are things represented, I'm talking about numbers themselves. Both roles, 1 sentence, the full of it structure. And here premise A, quasi-assertable if and only if true in the story, is applicable in principle, but I just reject it. It's false. In the story there's 1 even prime, but I quasi-assert that there are 0 because I'm counting the real ones, of which there are none. Truth in the fiction and quasi-assertability come apart, and I side with the world.
Which is the deepest change of the 3, so let the clean version be the one that stands. Reflexive fictionalism does not merely restrict the old principles, it demotes one. Story truth no longer legislates what may be quasi-asserted. The world does, sentence by sentence, depending on how the sentence divides its X-ish illusions between the sincere and the as-if. And that demotion forces a structural change Yablo is explicit about. The obstacle to multiple readings was the single all-purpose governing fiction, capital F. So F goes, in its place, make-believe games, plural, G, different games playable with the very same sentence, as occasion demands. Real content of S is log-based G of S, for whichever G is operative, and applied talk becomes self-applied when acceptability in the game falls under the control of facts about the X things themselves.
Same logarithm, floating base. Honestly, it's a proper repair. It's not a patch. The bomb's blast pattern told us exactly what to rebuild, and this rebuilds exactly that. I'm fond of it. Are we done? I feel like we've earned being done.
Section 9 opens with a sentence I want you to hear cold. Yablo writes, and this is nearly verbatim, reflexive fictionalism is not much use, and has to be treated as a station on the way to something better.
I'm sorry, not much use? He built it. 2 sections of careful machinery, the butterflies, the 2x2. He built it and he's condemning it in the first sentence? On what grounds?
On the wickedest grounds there are no complaint about what it says, a complaint about who could possibly want it. He runs 2 test drives. First customer, you, a nominalist excited by reports that one can now use numbers to talk about numbers, keys in hand. What description of the numbers shall you attempt first?
Give me a second, because I want to actually feel this rather than watch it. I'm a nominalist. I think there are no numbers. So the description of the numbers I want to give is, there aren't any. That's it. That's the whole review. The new machine lets me say it fancy. The number of numbers is 0, but there aren't any was already available. 3 words, no logarithms. My excitement is, as Yablo apparently puts it, fading.
Second customer, a platonist, persuaded by some subtle transcendental argument that the numbers are real. Surely she wants to say useful, informative things about them, and here is a technology for describing numbers. Should she be excited?
No, because she doesn't need as-if numbers, she has real ones. She's been quantifying over them all along, entitled by her belief. The fiction is a backup generator for a house that has power. Mildly interesting that it exists, she'd note it and move on. So the nominalist won't use it and the platonist doesn't need it. Who is this for? It's a doctrine with no constituency. That's a genuinely great objection, and I'm annoyed I didn't smell it. It's not that reflexive fictionalism is false, it's that it's a shop with no customers.
And now, Clem, before I give you Yablo's repair, you are a nominalist. You said so in the cold open of part 1. Is there truly nothing you want to say about numbers beyond there aren't any?
Well, I, as a philosopher, no, nothing. But obviously if I'm actually doing mathematics, I need... Oh no, I need both. Talking to you in the ontology room, the number of even primes is 0, there being no numbers at all. Sitting an exam, teaching a class, proving something, the number of even primes is 1, and here's Euclid to show the primes don't stop. I need to say 0 on Tuesday and 1 on Wednesday, and mean both, and be right both times. The nominalist who rejects numbers but not number theory does please tell me the paper has this.
The paper has this. You have arrived at section 9's destination 1 paragraph early, and you should finish the thought rather than let me. What distinguishes Tuesday from Wednesday?
On Tuesday I'm portraying the numbers as they are, and they aren't, so 0. On Wednesday I'm portraying the numbers as they're supposed to be imagined, as the game says to picture them, and the game pictures exactly 1 even prime. Same sentence frame, 2 targets. The world or the picture?
Yablo's labels. On Tuesday you speak in a disengaged manner. On Wednesday, engaged, and he notes the social fact that clinches it. A disengaged nominalist and a platonist have not much to talk about. Lots of primes, no primes, conversation over. An engaged nominalist and a platonist get on famously. She asks, do you think the number of even primes is 1? And you answer, not what do you mean there are no numbers, but, yes, and here is the proof.
Which is just true to life. That is what actual nominalist mathematicians are like. Nobody storms out of the seminar. So reflexive fictionalism as built serves the disengaged me and stiffs the engaged me. Provision for talking about numbers as they are, none for talking about them as they're to be imagined. And any real nominalist wants to be both. So the fix is, what, another tier of game?
A new type of game. A game G is basic if acceptability in G answers to how things really are. Everything so far has been basic. A game G star is parasitic if acceptability in G star answers to how things are imagined to be in some other game G. Your Wednesday self is playing a parasite. The host is the ordinary applied game, where numbers are assigned to things that are really there. The parasite assigns numbers to the things imagined in the host. The numbers as the applied game pictures them include exactly one even prime, so the parasite licenses assigning 1 to the even primes. Engaged talk is parasitic talk. And the whole package, reflexive fictionalism plus the engaged-disengaged relativity, Yablo names relative reflexive fictionalism.
My example, so blame me, but this is Sherlock Holmes scholarship, isn't it? Disengaged, Holmes doesn't exist. Engaged, at the Baker Street Irregulars annual dinner, Holmes lodged at 221B, and anyone who says 221A is a menace. The second isn't about a real detective, it's answerable to the Holmes canon, a claim made with the fiction's furniture judged against the fiction by a speaker who never believed a word of it.
A serviceable parallel with one wrinkle flagged. Your Holmes claim is judged against a fixed canon of texts. The mathematical parasite is judged against how things are to be imagined in a game whose content outruns any text. And now I must be permitted a footnote. Total detour. Bear with me.
You've vanished down the footnote again. It's a load-bearing section. We're mid-repair. Is this going anywhere?
Yes, watch. 2 confessions right here. One in the text, one in the fine print. The first sits in a parenthesis closing exactly this passage. The tidy picture of 2 games, parasite and host, is, Yablo says, somewhat misleading. Parasitic games tend to swallow their hosts so that we wind up with a single game parasitic on itself. And then 7 words that should be printed on the syllabus of every seminar on this paper. His words exactly. Details to be given elsewhere, I hope. Footnote 11 is pinned to that very parenthesis, and it holds the second confession.
I hope? The mechanism that just rescued the entire view, the thing the engaged nominalist runs on, and a parenthesis confesses the machine tends to eat itself. Specification to follow. Hope? That is a promissory note stapled over a hole, Solomon. And it's not a side issue, it's the issue. If the parasite swallows the host, what exactly is Wednesday me answerable to? Park it. The IOU. It goes on the scorecard next to the decoder ring, and I am charging interest.
Parked, the IOU. And your irritation is earned. The note really is promissory, on the page, in those words. But the second confession in the footnote is why the detour pays for itself, so hold the anger for 1 more minute. Yablo distinguishes 2 things the engaged nominalist might be doing. Reading 1, saying S and meaning in the game, S, a report about the game. Reading 2, saying S outright, and, his staging, nearly, psst, judge this by its faithfulness to reality as we are supposed to imagine it.
And he picks?
Reading 1 is simpler. Our subject matter stays the world as it is. But reading 2, Yablo says, better captures how it feels to say there are infinitely many primes. I feel myself to be talking, he says, not about the practice, but the objects. Why otherwise is the infinity of the primes necessary and a priori? He credits Mark Crimmins for pressing him on it.
Ah, so the footnote is the phenomenology clause. Engaged talk mustn't collapse into metafictionalism light. If Wednesday me merely means the game says 1 even prime, we're back at station 2, deploring the contents of stories. The parasite has to keep the feel of object-directed talk about the numbers, judged by the imagining, or the ladder's earlier rungs come loose.
Which is precisely the tension Section 10 is built to cache, so the detour delivers us to the door. Section 10, communication. An under-discussed puzzle, Yablo calls it, and it is strange how under-discussed. How do mathematicians communicate so happily across the deepest possible disagreement about the nature, even the existence of the very objects at issue? Why does the question philosophers sweat over make no difference at the blackboard?
Carnap has an answer, presumably. Framework internal, framework external.
He does, and Yablo states it fairly before declining it. Number talk is internal to the number framework, answerable only to the framework's rules. True is the label for what the rules license, agreement the label for 2 people uttering the same licensed sentence. Yablo's complaint is not that this is false, but that it is superficial. We asked how mathematicians agree despite their ontological differences, and Carnap tells us, in effect, to ignore the differences. But to ignore them is to ignore what the discussants take themselves to be saying, and, to that extent, what they are saying. It is good, Yablo remarks dryly, that mathematicians do not come to blows over which sentences to accept, but we cannot call it agreement until we know what the sentences mean in their mouths.
Whereas the fictionalist can say, it's agreed how the numbers are to be conceived, an omega sequence generated from 0 by successor, and it's agreed what anything answering that conception would have to be like, infinitely many primes and all the rest. The Platonist adds, and something really answers to it. I doubt that. but each of us hears the other as talking about the numbers as they are taken to be. Same target, one live disagreement quarantined off to the side. Real agreement, not Carnap's label.
Everyone should now be happy, Yablo says, and then, because he is honest, he shows you the crack in the happiness. The word real is doing two jobs. Ask, what makes real content real? Answer 1, it concerns real things, moons rather than numbers. Call that objectual reality. Answer 2, it is really asserted, as opposed to merely pretend asserted. Call that assertional reality. And the moral of the engaged nominalist is that these come apart. When I, nominalist, declare the primes infinite, assertional reality is present. There is something I am genuinely saying. Objectual reality is absent. My topic is the numbers as they are to be imagined, not a realm of things.
And the Platonist can weaponize that. She says, when I say there are infinitely many primes, I mean bona fide entities, infinite in number, objectively real content. You believe what you mean by the sentence, you don't believe what I mean by it. So we don't agree after all. The handshake was two different sentences wearing the same words.
And Yablo's response is a parenthesis. He will not address the problem here, he says, except to register a doubt. He doubts the Platonist is actually advancing an objectively real content in the mathematical moment. One asserts the reality of numbers, he observes, only when doing philosophy, and we were talking about agreement in mathematics.
That's either exactly right or a bit slippery, and I genuinely can't tell which at speed. It's the hermeneutic move again. Don't ask what the Platonist officially avows in the seminar. Ask what her blackboard assertions are actually doing. But she's standing right there saying that's not what I mean, and the parenthesis pats her on the head. Park it. The balking Platonist. Third item on the scorecard. Not because I think Yablo's wrong, but because a parenthesis is not a payment.
Parked, the balking Platonist. And with that, remarkably, the structure is complete. Stand back and look at it. Games instead of one fiction. Basic and parasitic, engaged and disengaged, objectual and assertional, sentences whose words split allegiance mid-clause. Every piece forced, we watched each one get forced, and yet,
if you'd shown me this flowchart cold in part 1, I'd have laughed. Solomon, this was supposed to be the relaxed alternative to Platonism. Quine's menu had 3 items because ontology is meant to be austere. We've replaced one abstract realm with a taxonomy of nested make-believe that needs a parenthesis hoping for its own details. If I have to carry a decoder ring, an IOU, and a 2x2 matrix just to say the number of planets is 8 without perjury, the Platonist travels lighter. Belief in numbers is starting to look like the budget option. Who joins this revolution?
hold that exact formulation, word for word. Because the first paragraph of section 11 states your objection, Yablo's phrasing is that a revolution with this many rules is unlikely to generate a whole lot of fervor, and his reply does not defend the revolution, it denies there ever was one. What the reply says instead, I will not preview, except to tell you its consequence. It changes what kind of theory we have been building for 2 episodes, and it is where the paper finally cashes its title. Bring the scorecard. All 3 items come due.